Grand rising, everyone. I'd like coming to live. Spirit and coffee. Got my coffee here. Mm, so yummy. Okay, so let's get started. Um, a couple things running through my mind, and partially why I think that I was not on this podcast for a while is because I was going through a great transformation in my own life. Right? When COVID happened, COVID hit, and everybody was going crazy, and families were changing. Good morning, Christina. Good morning, Kumar. um, is that when that happened, we were sort of in this incubation stage, and I think that it really had us look at our family dynamics. It had us look at our friendship dynamics, the people we were around. Hey, Pralesk. And so, I think when that happened, there was this state of like reflection, and then after, right, it's the after effect of that reflection. Well, what's to come next? And I think people, if they were able to really understand the significance of that time, which I was calling an incubation time, were they really looking at their life, reflecting back, and how did they change it coming out of it, right? So now I feel like there's this blossoming, there's this new energy coming in, and that's kind of where I feel like I'm at. And so, I don't know how other people are feeling in terms of that, but hopefully you're saying, I looked at my relationships, I looked at my life. I don't know what you guys went through. I know a lot of people went through hardships, and I don't think anybody escaped it except for people that maybe don't live in society. um it's particularly the way we do, correct? Like just structured societies, that maybe there wasn't an impact as much, but people that were living in structured societies, felt the impact, because that's what it did. It impacted commerce, it impacted, the way that we operate in our jobs, basically everything shut down. Now, the rebirthing, the coming out and understanding what we're seeing now. And as I stated before, no one knows, but what is your truth? What happened? What changed about you? Was there a new way of coming into the world after that whole process happened? And for me, there was a huge shift in the way that I see life. I'm not the same version of myself anymore. And that's what spiritual alchemy is about. It's about constant change. It's rebirthing new parts of yourself. So when people say you go through an initiation, or they say that there was a death and a rebirth, or you're reborn again, that's really what they're alluding to, is the fact that we go through several deaths in our life. And we used to break it up and actually honor that through ceremony or through different rites of passage, which have not really happened. It's kind of been taken away from us in a way, now that we live in the societies that we do, especially in the Western world. But we used to. And I think that the Catholic religion or the Christian religion tried to keep some of those rites of passage. But really, what were they teaching us? Because what happens in some native cultures is when women go through their menstrual cycle, they take them out into a sacred place, and they go through ceremony, and they teach them about that. No one taught me, right? No one taught me about any of that. They were just, and then everybody hated the fact that they had menstruation, and it was just this bad thing, ugly thing, but we honored it in the past. There was a ritual, a rites of passage. You're becoming into womanhood. For the men, it was the same thing. They went out and they hunted, right? And they did all these things, and they were taught these skills, and all that. And so the rites of passage happen for each. We have midlife crisis. That's a rites of passage, right? Where we go, I'm going through a midlife crisis, and we see it, right? Um, the common one we most people kind of joke about is, when the guy, and not to just point fingers, but this is just for context. An older gentleman will go out and start, buying fast cars, in his 50s, 60s, and he's, wants to be young and vibrant again. So that's like, they call it a midlife crisis. I don't think it's a crisis, it's a rites of passage. It's a way that we are renewing ourselves, that we're reinventing who we are, that we realize that the past former self doesn't no longer works. And it's because we've experienced life. We've experienced things, and we're ready to transition into something different. But they don't teach us. And so some people go crazy, Um, and by crazy, I don't mean like, mentally crazy, but they just start acting different, and they don't know how to hone in that energy and go through the rites of passage. So we have gone through a rites of passage through the times of COVID. You could call it a rites of passage, and it's a good thing, not a bad thing. Some people will see it as a bad thing, but if you understand it from the spiritual perspective, it was a cosmic, we'll say, rites of passage. We'll say it was a macrocosm rites of passage for people to start to renew themselves and rebirth themselves. So hopefully that's what happened with you. And if you're still in that phase where you're like, I don't know what the hell happened with me, you can see it from that lens. It might give you an opportunity to be able to transition through, and start to perhaps heal if if you relationships were hard for you at the time, or you lost people, or you had to let go of people, which is not easy, or your life totally looks different now, or you let go of work, jobs, whatever it is that you had to go through during that time, that was a rite of passage. And what did you learn and how did you rebirth? If you were able to see the signs and go through it, you'll know that once you go through a rites of passage, you sort of expand your consciousness. You expand the way that you see the world. You're a little bit more wise. And so that wisdom gets carried on, and the new version of you is not starting from ground zero, but it's starting from a new space with historical understanding, which is awesome. And that's, learning from your mistakes, or learning from and being wiser in the way that you choose to navigate your life. So we see that, right? That happened. And navigating your life now, well, what's your north? Where is your north? What does that even mean to you? How do you start to reconstruct your life in a way that's meaningful? I can tell you for myself, and you guys can chime in for sure. I love to always read what you guys are up to, or talk about what you're up to. But for me, I started to say, oh, I learned something new in terms of slowing down. I learned how to slow down, which is not new. That's a new thing for me. I'm a go, go, go person. Do, do, do. I'm a doer. And if I'm not doing, I'm uncomfortable. And being, right, which is what we say, learn how to be, becomes very uncomfortable for long periods of time for me. I was like, I need action. I need to move. I need to do something. My body's calling me to do something. Well, during the time that I was in incubation, I had to learn to slow down and to stop. And it was so uncomfortable. It was very uncomfortable, in fact, because for me, slowing down and stopping means, and I equate it to being lazy, or equate it to not doing enough. Meaning what? I'm not enough. Saying I'm not enough. I'm not enough, and I'm not adding value. Well, is that true? The reality is it's not true. And when I slowed down and I learned to nurture myself and take care of myself, I have this new profound understanding of compassion for others. Seeing people in the daily grind, constantly being hard on themselves, and looking at myself and saying, wow, that was me. I mean, I knew it before. I knew that I was hard on myself. I knew that I was a doer, and I would try to slow down, and I said I was. But when I was really able to embody it, really able to practice it, then I was able to understand, okay, this is how I slow down. And when I slowed down and I allowed myself to go through that uncomfortable feeling of slowing down and being patient, then I learned something new. Now, this is where the balance comes in, even in Buddhism. And I love to talk about Buddhism because it talks about the balance, right? Looking the mid, what's the middle path? We see this in Christianity too. Sin, when people talk about sin, it just means they miss the mark, right? If you go back, and you look at the etymology of the word, that's where it comes from. It just means you've missed the mark, that you're on a trajectory and maybe you're really off. And if you go into one extreme or the other, you're going to really be off, and a detriment to who? To you, maybe to society. You know, maybe there's causing conflict, or maybe you're self sabotaging. So learning to come to that middle path where you're not too one or the other. It's that yin yang feeling, right? Where you understand how to relax, but you also know how to get into action. And there's the both hand, because people say, well, just be. Yeah, but you got to do too. But if you're just doing, then you got to just be. And if you just be, you got to do. And so there's that middle of how do I be and plus be in action, in motion. And we're always in motion. Okay. Even me moving my hands right now, there's motion happening, right? We're not just a tree just sitting there. We have a body we can move around, which is awesome. So looking at that and understanding that. So finding your yin yang. And now for me, it was doing and being and understanding how to be patient. Not necessarily, I want it all now, let's do it now, let's get it done. And that's me. And I'm a driver. But what I learned is drive the things I love instead of just driving all kinds of stuff to be busy. And those spaces in between where I get to rest, allow those spaces to exist. And as those spaces exist, I don't have to feel guilty for allowing myself to rest. So that's what I learned. And let me tell you what, my anxiety has gone away. Now, I don't know for those of you who have followed me for quite some time, but recently, during the COVID times, I had anxiety. I never had anxiety in my life. I felt like, oh my God, these people that run around with anxiety all day, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how someone can have anxiety. I mean, I feel so, my heart goes out to those individuals, and I'm like, please find a way to move through it. Please find a way to overcome it, to work with it, to learn how to manage it. Because if I had to live my life that way all the time, oh my God, I'd go crazy. It would be awful. It was the worst feeling ever. I had never had anxiety. Or if I did, I wasn't recognizing it because it was so um, ingrained in the subconscious mind that it wasn't extracting itself. So, but when I experienced it, I said, holy shit, what is this? Like I couldn't figure out how to get out of it. And it was like, you can't, you've got to go through it. But at the end of the tunnel and allowing myself to let it go through me and move through me and understand it, there's this bliss and peace at the end of that, which is, you've got to go through it. And that's hard. Couldn't really talk about anxiety before because I never really experienced it. And I did for the first time. And I said, holy shit, how do I get through this? Now, here's the deal. I process things really quickly. If you start to process these emotions, right, you build a tolerance. And your tolerance, it's good to have tolerance for this stuff because what it does is it gives you that greater space to allow yourself that longer ride of bliss and joy. So it's like you catch the wave of joy for longer periods of time. And then when anxiety shows up again, or these emotions that are uncomfortable show up again, you know how to move through them and they happen less often, not as extreme. So we don't get taught this though, right? That's not what they're teaching us about anxiety. You know what they tell us? Go take a pill. Rather than asking, what is the practice? What is going to help you move through the anxiety, work with it, manage it, bring you back down to earth? Because usually anxiety is like I'm chasing something. Like it's out there, I want it, and you feel like your body wants to crawl out, like your like something wants to come outside of you. It's almost like everything's going faster than your body can go. It's just the weirdest feeling, right? And I'm sure you guys have had anxiety. If you have, you can let me know. I feel like let's see, Christina says, I feel like it reinforced my level of patience. Right now, we haven't had water over 2 weeks. Oh no. Yeah, oh no. Well, hopefully you have a gym membership or something somewhere you could go shower, friends. I'm hoping where you can use the water. So, yes, and patience, right? And understanding that. So, moving through it. And here's, kind of going into what I want to talk about was a quote that I put on the other day and had this sort of epiphany, right? Where I was like, oh, we've been thinking about this the wrong way. So we always tell people practice what you preach, right? That's like a common thing. People say, oh, just practice what you preach and this and that and the other. And I was like, the other day I started thinking, no, preach what you practice. We need to flip that idea. Instead of telling practice what you preach, no, preach what you practice. In other words, experience is golden and not the opposite. Conceptually, we can say things. Conceptually, we can say, yeah, I get it. But do you get it? Or is it just that your brain understands it? Because once the body engages in a concept, once your body starts to move in the direction of a concept, the experience is different than the concept. Completely two different things. The concept is cerebral, it's imaginal, it's almost like a fairy tale, right? It's just a word or a phrase, or it's a symbol, but it's not it's an image, but it's not necessarily the experience of that image, even words themselves. So we put language together and we can say, well, language describes something. But if we're putting these fancy words together without really feeling it or understanding how it feels, do we really know? So preach what you practice. So what are you practicing? And that's what's important, right? What practices are you putting in your life? And that's why I talk and talk and talk forever. That's why I've had 5 years, almost, what is it, a little over 4 years of my podcast talking. Why? Because I preach what I experience. I look at the experience of my life and then I talk about it. Now I change. Why? Because I'm a spiritual alchemist. So things change. The way that I view the world changes. The way what you have heard maybe 4 years ago to today, there might be some underlying things that are the same, but there may be things that have evolved and changed over time. Because you open up your mind to that flexibility and you allow that flexibility to exist within you. That flexibility allows you to expand your consciousness. Otherwise, you're stuck in old narratives. So you've got to apply it to your life, apply it, practice it, and see what happens. If you're talking about meditation, someone can read a book. Look, check this out. Someone can read an entire book on meditation. They can understand the different types of meditation, the different breathing techniques, the different music, sound vibrations, the different, all of that. They can understand the whole thing and they can sit there and talk about it to people. But have they practiced it? Or is it just regurgitation from what they've read and symbols and what somebody else said? When they practice it, they may have a different way of explaining it or describing it, or it may not even work. Or they might say, when I was doing this, this worked for me and that didn't work for me. So preach what you practice. Go out and practice. We could talk about the chakra systems all day. People can talk about chakras and they can talk about whatever it is they're talking about all day long. And yes, they can be very eloquent and they can be very on point with their words, but have they practiced it? Because you're going to get a whole different experience. Now, when you practice it, you have a different sort of way to describe what's going on. If I was talking about working with my root chakra, right, I could say, oh, and the root chakra does this and that and the other. And people say, oh, great. But how does it feel? Okay. How does it feel? So, yeah, and part of it could be that, right? Part of it could be that lower primal instinct of sexual desire or whatever. So it could be that. Now, the thing with that though, right, is if it's too much, if it's turned on too much and that's all you're thinking about, you don't get to expand consciousness because of that. So we can get stuck right at each one of those levels, and it's understanding what we are, who we are, and practice, right? So silence is a practice as well. You can be completely silent. If you practice silence, what did you learn from silence? What was the experience? We could, again, people do this all day long. They read, they read, they read, they read, and that's awesome. And they go out and they hear things and then they regurgitate them. And I'm like, well, how do you feel? I can't keep my mind silent. Oh, you're attaining. Nobody can, Mike. So good for you. Congratulations. You're like the rest of the population. And you're always turned on. Okay. I'm gonna just say that for the viewers here because I need some advice to control. Okay. Um, okay, so it could be hormones, I don't know. Um, it could be something deeper than that, and it could be the all the way back to your origin story of when you were a child, right? Typically our programming in stuff like this, if we're stuck at a particular space in our we'll just use chakras. If we're stuck in our chakra, if we're stuck in that root base chakra, right, where sexual desire is, and it's overly, hey Larak, overly stimulated, then we now need to understand, well, okay, what needs to be healed there. Now I couldn't ever give you an answer because I don't know, I'm not you. um that's not where I get stuck, right? And looking at what it is. Now, there's a couple of systems you can look to support you with that. Like there's the tantric. Tantra teaches you how to use that energy properly. So it's not that it's a wrong energy, but it's how you use that energy, right? Sexual energy is very powerful, and it's important, and it's not a bad thing, right? If you utilize it the right way. So the tantra system can teach you. So I would say go and look at that esoteric stuff. Again, this is spiritual alchemy, right? And alchemy, we look at how do we transform and transmute the energies, and how do we find the balance, right? So right now it's uncontrollable. So how do we find the balance within it so that we can focus, right? If it's like not having you focus, okay? So you can do that, right? Good morning. What is tantric? I don't know how to focus. Okay. So tantric, it's just a system and it's a technique of learning how to use that energy potential, that sexual energy potential, because everybody has their own way of energy within them. And some people are more sexual than others. And there's a reason, but you'd have to take a deep dive into your own psyche. I couldn't tell you why. I'm not you. I'm not living in your body. So I don't know. Is there any book? Um, I don't have a book in particular. I'm not a tantric expert. um, so I would say go online and maybe look up some stuff. Don't just follow anybody, but maybe go online and just look up tantric and how to utilize it. Um, yeah, so I would look at that because the sexual root chakra is very powerful, and it's really actually yeah, it's really powerful, and it's where that primal energy comes from. But if you learn to transmute it, if you're stuck at your base root chakra, learning to transmute it up the chakras can give you the focus that you need. That energy is the strongest energy to give us focus. So in tantric, from my understanding, like I said, I'm not an expert on tantric. I looked into it for a little bit just to try to understand it. But with that energy, if you were with a partner or with somebody, you would hold back the release of that sexual tension, and you would use it to move it up your body and pour it out into something valuable. Like for instance, if you were going to start a company or a business or write a book or create art or whatever. And what comes from that energy when you move it up is this um, fire, motivational, inspirational energy that you can use. So if it's stuck, you're missing out on the creative potential that you can actually give to the world because you can't focus. So the actual act of moving that energy through you, right? Instead of keeping it just there, it's stuck, and moving it up. So you can see that, and that's what I was saying, preach what you practice. Learning how to use that energy. Guess what? If you really could use it properly, Mike, it's a powerful tool to actually, well, you can heal yourself with it. You can start to create art. Some of the greatest art and all that comes from that system. So it just depends on where you're at, right? Different people are in different parts. Some people have energy in their solar plexus, or it's too turned on in their solar plexus or their heart chakra, right? Some people are very emotional and they don't know how to balance that out, or their throat. Some people um, are understimulated in their throat chakra. So as you could see, it gets harder and harder to move up the chain. And throat chakra is the hardest one because that's where your truth exists. That's where you speak your truth, and most people will not get past that because they're afraid, right, of what will happen. Then you move it up to the mind where the silence sits. So learning to work with it will help you when I'm at work. But once I'm home, those thoughts come from nowhere and I can't control. Yeah, I would say look into those systems. You can look into a sexologist too. There's also psychiatrists, not psychiatrists, psychologists who specialize in this. You might you could talk to individuals. So there's people who specialize in this stuff, but I would say for you is really finding your practice that helps you move the energy. If it's all stuck in one place, you're not ever going to be able to focus. You've got to move that energy up the system. You've got to be able to work with that energy. No, I can't visit them. If any one of my people came to know about it, I'm done. Okay, got it. So it's like a private thing. That makes sense, and I understand that. So I would say, if there's no person you can go to, I'd start reading and start working with moving that energy through you. Do you know anyone on Podbean? Any such? There was a lady that I did start to research on sexology. She was doing a lot of stuff. I was kind of looking into it for myself one time, how to use that sexual energy and what does it mean, right? Because it's such a huge topic that's so hidden, right? Everybody's afraid to talk about it. So, well, some people are. Um, but it's the greatest potential we have. We come from that, right? A mother and father have to get together and make, love or have this passion, or maybe it's not even, maybe it's just whatever. It's in the heat of passion, whatever, come together. And then we're here. That's how we're here. But nobody talks about it and people get uncomfortable. And then there's some very dark stuff that can come from that if it's not taken care of properly either. And I don't want to say dark. I would say shadow or um I don't know what the right word is, but I'll come up with it. I don't like the word dark. I need to change my language in some way, but I'll figure out what that is. But it comes out distorted, I would say, right? It would be a distorted way. So that energy, and I found this lady that so if you go online and you just look up tantric and all that, you can search, you'll find people. And she was talking about, or you can go online and just say, sexologists, and there'll be some. And then you can say tantric. And I would say that system, because it's an ancient system, would probably be the best one to look at. And that, could help you. And it's important. Actually, somebody brought up sex the other day, and about how important it is for us to um, make sure that that part of our life is stimulated. It's a part of who we are, and we just don't talk about it enough, I think. It is who we are. It's very primal, but it's also very pleasurable when we know what we're doing and we can actually utilize that energy in the right way. um it's when we don't address it, right? It's when we don't talk about it that we start to use it in this weird distorted way, and we're hiding and we're doing weird shit instead of saying, okay, here's what's going on. How do I work with this energy? Okay. But it's very at the root. It's that pleasure point, and then we got to say, well, let's move that energy up through us, right? In through our body. Let it circulate through your body. In the beginning, I thought I'm a 25 I'm 25 and virgin, so it's common, but now I feel uncontrollable. Wait, so at the beginning I thought I'm 25 and so you were a virgin at 25, is that what you're saying? I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. So you were a virgin up till you're 25? I Is that what you were saying? It says in the beginning I thought I'm 25 and a virgin, so it's common, but now I feel uncontrollable. Yes, you were. Okay, that could be why you suppressed that energy for a very long time, right? I think men, with their sexual energy starts very young, younger than girls. And I think that's what I don't know if I want to say younger than girls. It's not true. I'm not making true statements here because, it can start with anybody early enough. But, hormones do play a role in this. And if you're suppressing that, then that could be why it's uncontrollable now because you waited so long and and um and now that energy is just built up, right? And it's uncontrollable I think for younger guys too, right? I'm from India. We lose virginity only after marriage. Oh, got it. That's correct. Um, okay. And thank you for sharing and being open and honest. Um, yes, in India it's like that, right? Um, we're a little bit more liberated here in in those terms here in America. It's not necessarily like that here. um, so, but that's okay. I mean, are you gonna get married? Those are things you might want to talk about with your wife if you get married or if you are married. And if you can't, no, I have two elders. Okay, but you're not married or you're not getting married. Oh, I see what you mean. You have two elders. Oh, I see. Okay. So right now, okay, I think I'm getting the story because I don't know your story, right? So you're the youngest. I get it because I lived in India. I understand. Okay, you have two elders. They're gonna get married before you, but you have these uncontrollable desires to have sex, and you can't because you have to stay virgin. Got it. So I'm just gonna say it. Learn to please yourself. There you go. Um, Learn to please yourself. You're gonna have to learn to please yourself. Now, I wouldn't say go into like pornography and all that stuff. Only the reason why, because that can really mess you up as well. Okay, really, it can mess you up a lot, a lot. In fact, people are in rehab because it's messed them up. Because what it does is it takes away that intimate relationship you can have with an individual, and it's really important to have that. But if you don't, that's fine too. Um, but I would say, oh, you feel guilty. No. Oh, okay, I see. Got it. Thank you for being honest and talking about it. It does not have emotion. Yeah. Um, we have these urges and desires. I mean, we can't say we don't. It's part of it's part of human nature, right? And the fact that you're older and you haven't had a chance to experience this is probably why. So I would say learn how so if it's shame and guilt, those are things that you're going to have to learn how to overcome. We live in a society where that's shamed and guilt as well. So in the Christian society, when all that happened, I too was raised in that way where sex is bad, evil. If you do it before marriage, you're going to go to hell, you're going to burn, you're going to die, everything's going to explode. I don't know. You're a bad person, you're a sinner, you're this, you're that. And what I've come to evolve in consciousness and understand is that energy is really powerful, and that energy And we have pleasure for a reason. There's a reason that there's pleasure points within us. And so it's not about being good or Christian here in India. Yeah, I know. I understand it's a different system. Like I said, I lived there for about a year. And not to claim that I know, but I have friends from there. So I've asked tons of questions about this topic with them to understand and to know. Um, yes, I get it. It's about dignity and commitment. I get it. Totally understand that. Um, but it's still ridden with shame and guilt. Okay. So, and yes, I do understand. And I will say that in a way it's good, in a way it's bad. It's good in that I think the men are a little bit different there, a lot different. And then, with the, so, but in terms of like the pleasure and understanding that, I would say go online, understand, pleasure, what that means. Okay. We don't want you to lose your mind. Wouldn't be a good thing, right? Or do something crazy because you can't curb the urge to do it. And that's what happens when we do these things, right? People lose their mind and then they go out and do crazy shit because we're like, it's bad, don't do it. But our bodies are saying, yeah, but this is something that I need. I need to release this energy. Okay. So, are you sure that we can turn this urge positive? Yes, absolutely. You can turn it into a positive. It's all up to you. It's your mind, it's your story, it's your way. So, I would say go look at Tantric, go look at the different systems that they have in terms of that sexual energy and understand there's even a Netflix show. It's more geared towards women because I think here women in the United States were seen wrong for being too sexual. Um, and they're starting to say, but women have more pleasure points than men, and we feel the pleasure of sexual interaction even more than men. And we have all these pleasure points and understanding what that means. Well, is it a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing because it was built into us. We have these pleasure points for a reason, right? Now, if we get stuck there, pleasure pointing ourselves all day long, that's a problem. Or if we don't know how to do things and our brain's going crazy because we're sitting there pleasuring ourselves all day, that's a problem. Okay. So I'm not a sexologist. um, but I can talk from my own experience, right? You have asked me to go online and read. You can find a few links in this chat. You know what, Mike? Why don't you send me an email? That would be easier. My email is spiritandbrew@gmail.com. And I thought about talking about sex quite a bit on here because I think it's such a huge topic for people. No one talks about it as much. I think they're starting to in the Western world, right? And that Netflix show that came on was talking about the pleasure and women's pleasure and what it means and getting comfortable with being able to say, well, this is what happens. We explore our bodies maybe. We want to understand what feels good and we should, because if we're with a partner, we want to be able to tell them what's pleasurable, what's not. We want to be able to communicate these things. It's really important in relationship. We never did that before, but he would just maybe remain silent and pretend. Um, and fake things, fake orgasms or fake whatever it is. So yes, I'm sitting naked for the morning, okay, and feel something is wrong with me. I didn't get your mail ID. Can you oh yeah, I'll just mail it here and then I'll give you some stuff to maybe read. But I would suggest doing your own research and spirit and brew. Okay. And anybody else who has questions about the sexual stuff, because it's huge. And we definitely don't need people running around, you know, hurting people because they can't curb their urges. They don't know how to. Let's just teach people. Teach people. That's why I said preach what you practice. Practice, understand, know your body, all parts of your body. So, but thanks, Mike, for chiming in. I think other for bearing me. Oh yeah, no worries. That's what we're here for. That's what these people on Spirit and Coffee that have showed up, they know. We don't see down on anybody here. I've had shadow people show up, people that are, you know, whatever they say they're satanic, all these kind of crazy things. And the reality is people want to be seen and heard, and understand that you can transform that energy into something beautiful. All the energy we have, whether dark, light, whatever you want to call it. And I don't like call it dark and light, but all of these uncomfortable feelings that we have can be transformed and transmuted. That's part of the alchemic process. I wouldn't be much of a spiritual alchemist if I said, "Oh no, don't talk about that." What? No. We have to talk about these things. That's what helps us move through it, and really allow ourselves to move the energy. So I would say, Mike, just understanding that, you know, that that urge, it's very real. And there's nothing wrong with you. I can guarantee, the people on here that are still on here are like, yep, I've had those feelings before. They may not say it, they might be from a different time, but they're like, I've had very high sexual urges in my life. And I've, done this or that, and it's part of the normal process. And the fact that they don't teach us is kind of sad. It's kind of like not giving us that rite of passage that I was talking about the other day, to really understand, what does it mean? What is that energy for? How do we utilize it? And then cutting it off for so long, as you can see, it might be to a detriment, because then we can't focus, and all we're thinking about is this thing that we've like cut off from ourselves completely. So learning to use that energy, and if we learned how to use sexual energy, which is a good one, it's a good one. Why? Because that is our greatest creative potential, comes from that energy. And that's why tantric systems are so important, because they teach us how to use that sexual energy for something powerful, to create, to co-create with the divine. It's that understanding, how is it moving through me? It's just energy. It's energy that's built up in one of your systems, right? And hormones are totally connected to that. Which chakras, hormones, all that stuff are all interconnected. And it says, how do we move this energy? It's just stuck. It's stuck in one spot. How do I move it through me? Yes, I'll look at the email as soon as we're done here. So, but that's what this is about. And I love that, I love when people come on here truly authentic and open hearted. It's not easy, I'm sure. And some people will be like, whoa, what was that? And I'm like, no, what do you mean, whoa? Let's look at it without judgment and understand it. And then we can relate and remember that we too have those same urges, right? If I sat here and said, "Oh no, I never had sexual desires," or that's bullshit. Come on, let's be real. Unless you're neutered or cut off, you may not know what that feels like, right? Because we all go through it. It's part of life. That's why we procreate. That's why we have kids, because people feel that urge to engage in it. So, um, I have rehearsals many times before texting here. Thank you for being polite. Oh, okay. That's good. It's good that you're talking about it, though. That's the first step. Talk about it, and then we figure out how to move through it, right? And of course, you're welcome. There's just this whole new energy, right? It's like India or Indian man. That's what I say. Thank you for being polite. It's like touches my heart. That the whole culture. They have a different way to describe things. You're welcome that I was polite. And I think that's a reason why I think Indian men are just a little bit different in their connection with women, perhaps. So it might not be a bad thing, but you got to make sure you know what to do with that. I can't talk about this to anyone else. Yeah. Hey, hello. Good morning. My name is Rudy. Hey, from LA. Hey, you from LA. What's up, Rudy? Were you digging the sexual talk? I think I've wanted to do sex talks a long time on my show. It's like talk about it, because man, people, it's really, if we don't address it properly, it can lead to some really distorted narratives. Really distorted narratives. That's where rape and all this stuff comes in, because people are not able to understand how to use that energy properly. And we don't, like, we can heal it as a society together if we talk about it, if we're able to communicate it, if we're able to say, here's what's going on, and then say, okay, how do we work through this? How do we move it around, right? How do we get that energy and move it through our system? I only have a few friends around five. They think I'm a decent guy. They don't know about my other side. Yeah, that's okay. That doesn't mean you're not decent. It just means that you've been. Here's what it means. It means that you've been deprived. Okay, there's a balance, right? And that's why I love Buddhism. There's the balance. You've cut. This is what happens when people cut off their, let's say, what we call those uncomfortable emotions of anger. Let's say that we put I'm not decent. I know it. It feels bad. It feels bad because you've been told it's bad and you don't know how to use it properly. So I would say this. Understand what that energy means. Okay? Understand truly what that energy is and what that potential means and how to use it properly. Okay? Right now, it's been it's like this, it's like an angry person, right? Someone who's angry, energy doesn't lie. Someone will be angry. They'll stuff it down, stuff it down, stuff it down, pretend it doesn't exist, hide it from everybody until they explode. Why? Because they were told that it was wrong to be angry. Well, the reality is we all get angry. How do we work with the energy is what's important. How are you moving that energy through you? How do you manage? And tolerance comes up. If you learn how to move the energy, you build a tolerance for it. You've been suppressed for your life. I couldn't imagine being 25 and not having been intimate or sexual with somebody. Like, there's built up energy there. So working to understand it is what's important, right? How do we understand it? How do we let it move through us? Yeah, and you're gonna feel frustrated. Of course you will. I'd feel frustrated. How many of you on here wouldn't feel frustrated if you couldn't actually, like, release that energy from within you? You'd be frustrated. Everybody would. And I'm just gonna say it, the majority of people masturbate. I'm just gonna tell you that. Okay? So we'll just say it. I had feelings from childhood, but these days it's too much. Yeah, because you suppressed it. You're suppressing it. So it makes sense. It's like a volcano. Okay. You think of it as a volcano. It's another way to look at it. It's like the volcano's there and it has all this pressure, right? And then all of a sudden it just explodes. That's it, right? So you've just been building up this energy and now it you can't control it anymore. And you're not shouldn't be controlling it. You should learn how to move through it, not try to hide it. How come I suppress it these many years without any, though I never know if I want to control it? Because you tried to control it and you can't. It's like a volcano again. You can't control it. There's no it's not just with the sexual energy, you guys. This is with everything in our life. You have to so learning to move energy through you is critical. If something, for instance, if I have anxiety, I'll just go back to the anxiety I was talking about earlier. And before I let you guys go, the anxiety that I had, I didn't know, I had never had anxiety, or at least I didn't feel that I had anxiety before. And all of a sudden it surfaced within me. And I'm like, what the hell? This anxiety's in me and I don't know what to do. And I was like, couldn't breathe. And rather than pretending it didn't exist and trying to stuff it down or take pills or this and that, I said, no, how do I work with this thing? How do I move through it? How do I get it to move through me? If I suppressed it, eventually I would have went freaking crazy. Okay? This is a conversation that my girlfriend should be listening to. Well, I'll tell her to join Spirit and Coffee or send her my podcast. Um, and moving through the anxiety is we don't or that's not the language we use, especially in the Western world. And I could say in a lot of the world. They don't say, "Hey, you have anxiety. Let's figure out how you're going to move through the anxiety." No, they say, "Oh, you have anxiety. Let's give you some pills. Let's mask it." But spiritual alchemy, as an alchemist, we say, what is going on with that energy? Why is it inside of me? Where is it coming from? We question it, we look at it, we dissect it, we understand it, and we say, what practices, and this is the key, Mike, okay? What practices can you put in place that will help you move the energy through you? Okay. So, again, one of your practices, like you said, okay, maybe you masturbate, right? That's a practice. But maybe it's not curbing the urge and it's not helping you move the energy completely. So what else is it? Maybe it's the shame and the guilt and all that you feel. So how do you overcome that mental part of it? Remember, spirit, mind, and body. We have to look at all parts of it and start to understand how to reshape your consciousness around what it means to you to have those urges. So, and then we start to look at that and we say, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. And then you start to understand it a little bit more. But then you move through it. And as you move through that energy and it starts to radiate through your body and you start to learn how to work through it, you build tolerance. That's what I was talking about earlier, how to build tolerance. Sometimes I just feel like hugging someone tightly, tell them all that I go through. See, there you go. That's a way to transmute it. You moved it from the sexual energy to the heart, right? Then I feel it's meaningless. No, it's not. See, there you go. So the psyche, the mind, the way that you're perceiving it is why you're not moving it through. Okay, well, whoever they are that thinks you're mad, we don't think you're mad. So there, at least you have a family. Okay? At least you have a family. And you're not a pervert. That's part of, like, how do you think you got here? Your parents actually had to have sex to have you. So you came here that way. If it was, let me just read this quote. Sorry. If I had this kind of conversation with my girlfriend, she shuts down and all sex goes out the window for about a week or so. She's very uptight. She's not open to have the conversation like this. Yes, I have family, but I can't about it this with them. They're not educated. Okay, and that's fine. Oh, trust me, Mike, they're educated. You wouldn't be here if they weren't. They had to have sex to have you. They may not talk about it though. They're like, "Oh, we don't talk about those things, right? Because we can't. It's bad. We don't want them to know because then they'll just be having sex with everyone or whatever it is." But um, so um, that was a nice show. Felt a little better. Yeah, they had to have sex. They knew what they were doing. Trust me. You don't even know how freaky. And I'm sorry, they were probably freaky when it was happening. Okay, so there you go. If they weren't having pleasurable sex, then that's very sad. Because it's a very intimate, pleasurable thing when you do it with somebody and you're intimate and all that kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. And pleasing yourself is important because you have to release that energy. You don't want that built up inside of you. In fact, if you don't use those organs, it can actually be a detriment to your health, literally. And I personally know. Okay. So it can do bad things for your health. So you have to be able to release that, right? And yeah, and it is hard to have these conversations with people who are not ready to have these conversations. It's not an easy subject to talk about. It's taken me forever to be able to even talk about it myself. Can I ask something out of the box? You can ask whatever you want. You don't have to ask permission. Go ahead. So it's not an easy topic. It's hard, and that's why I wanted to talk about sexual, because I think sex is such a big thing, and most people I think want to talk about it and don't know how. Um, Men have bum too. Uh, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. And why do women's bum make men? Um, oh, well, that's a different question. So I think your question is alludes to what might turn you on sexually. Um, and some men actually like other men's parts. So it's all just kind of what people get turned on by. It's all different, right? It's not the same. So some men don't feel like what you're saying. That's just how you feel. So I would explore, like, most people like women's not necessarily, not necessarily. That's how you feel. That's your worldview. But there are people who actually like men, who like men, and we have you know what? In the Western world, I'll just put it this way: in the Western world, there's all sorts of stuff happening in terms of gender and understanding gender, and we have different pronouns now, and everybody identifies with he, she, hers, it's, they, them. Some people are binary, da da da, whatever. I don't know. They're coming up with all these ideas about the way people deal with sex. Sex is just, we put all these labels, but what is it for you, right? Okay, I'm sorry for the question. I just wanted, no, don't worry. You don't have to be sorry. It's just what turns you on. So you can ask yourself, what turns me on? You can know those things in your sexual dialogue, right? Like, what turns me on? What do I like? What is this? And in fact, you should. To be honest with you, people shouldn't be getting in relationships. This is just my opinion, until they understand what they want sexually. There's some major things that need to happen in relationship, in my opinion, before people just start going into whole relationships. Number one, sexually, what do you want? Because here's what happens. Some people are a little more sexual than others, and they end up in a relationship where the other person's not as sexual. They never talk about it, and then what ends up happening? Cheating typically happens because of that, because you can't curb the urge for it, right? It's like you need someone who's a little bit more sexual, a little bit more open that way. Talk about finances, talk about your spiritual beliefs, talk about, like, these things don't get talked about at all. People just jump into whole relationships, and none of that gets talked about. Now in India, I know it's different. Trust me, I know that you guys do arranged marriages, so you just don't know. You just, whatever happens, I guess, happens. You don't really talk about, especially sex. Um, I know that for a fact. It's more like, what type of family, do they have the same religion? There's all these, like, I know, these little things that you guys got to look at. But I think that if you had a chance to talk about, what what you like sexually is important. You've got to understand that. Okay? I just have to have a woman in my life with whom I can dance on Ed Sheeran perfect song. Okay, well, there you go. That's beautiful. That's awesome. I love it. That's so, if there you have this idea and what you want. And so, but again, it doesn't make you a bad person, right? That intimacy is not bad. It's just learning to use that energy. And I know that we had a viewers like, I can't, talk about this with my girlfriend, she shuts off. you know um Maybe she's not 100% aware of what she wants sexually, or maybe she doesn't understand, or maybe she is afraid to speak out, or maybe there's shame around it for her. I don't know. I don't know her story. I don't know what her deal is or what. So, I would say, with her, um, give her the space to maybe explore what that means for her, or ask her questions like that. Why is it uncomfortable for you to go there? How can I make it comfortable for you? How do we or what needs to happen in order for you to be comfortable? There's all these questions you can ask to open someone up, right? So that they can start to feel comfortable. It was not very easy for me. I don't know that I could have had this conversation so calmly a few years ago, even because I'm searching for what it means as well, right? And crack all funny jokes, a person who accepts me for myself. But when this idiotic thoughts flows into my heart, I just lose myself. Well, that's okay. Hopefully you can lose yourself in your with the person you're with, right? And you guys can lose yourself in, tantric sex. I don't know. Learn it and then teach her. Just kidding. I don't know. Learn it and then just put it on there. I don't know. Um, so um it's like, hey, this is what learned. What about we try it? I don't know. I don't even know how the conversation would go. Um, it would be something like that, I guess. Um, but I'm learning too how to communicate this for myself. So, we're in it together. It may take another 2, 3 years for me to get married. Okay. Well, in the meantime, you have a lot of homework to do, right? So, uh, that too, if I start to earn good. So there you go. Learn. So teach yourself. Learn how to use that energy in a very, if you feel guilty, learn how to transform the mindset so that you're using that energy for something that you feels good. How do I use it to maybe move my career forward? How do I, because you can use that energy for anything you want. Um, yeah, only if you earn good, you can, yeah, daughters for marriage. Yeah, it's a little different there. I know. It's a big responsibility. Oof, I couldn't imagine. I always question those though, like my friends in India. I'm always like, are you scared to get married with just some, I mean, it's different here. It's the Western world. So, yes, I'll work on myself. Good. Yeah, work on yourself. Work on figuring out how to use that energy. Maybe you kind of learn how to, and then a woman's going to be involved. So, kind of learn what she might like, this and that and the other. And then when you marry, then yeah, they expect us to get settled by 25 or 29. Yeah. So then you could do that. And then maybe you'll have a really good healthy sexual relationship with your wife, and that would be awesome, right? So there you go. But teach yourself that way when she comes in you're comfortable to talk about it, and you can move her through that process. I'll try. Awesome. All right, so there you have it. It's already been an hour, but thank you guys for staying in there. Hopefully, I know we talked about it, but learning how to move your energy, all that kind of stuff. I'll send you an email. I'm glad you feel better for talking. I'm glad you had a place to come and feel like safe to talk about it. Um, Everybody's welcome to talk about anything they want to. Please know that, you guys. You're here, you're held in love and support in this space, just so you know. That's the way it works. I'm sorry if anyone felt bad because of me. No one feels bad, and you don't need to apologize. That's what we're here for. Okay, so there you have it. It is so normal, and Christina says it is so normal. Okay, and she's a friend of mine, and she's shoulder. See, so it's all normal. You're good. Don't worry, nothing's wrong with you. All right, so there you have it. Have a fantastical Tuesday. Of course, I will be seeing you guys tomorrow. Mwah, love and light. Bye bye.